Presentation was recorded live at CALLERLAB's 20th Annual Convention. This is tape number 11, Salesmanship Skills for Callers.
Hey, guess we're going to get started. I'm going to use the wireless, cordless microphone, and I have a handout that I'm going to give out. If you can take some and pass it down, we'll start with that pile on that side. And I will need these back because the office does want them. No, you get to keep one. Well, we want to welcome everyone here today. I know there's a lot of sessions to go to, and every year I come, I don't make half the sessions I want to make, so I end up buying the tape. And I'm excited this year that I got to be a moderator, because I've done enough of these panels here at the conventions, and I always wanted to be a moderator, and this year I found out I'm a moderator, but there's no panel. So I'm both. I don't know if they're trying to tell me something, but this presentation that you're about to hear comes about from something that I created through the business that I'm in outside of square dance calling for the New England Council of Callers Association, which is also known as NECA. And I'll briefly introduce myself because I do this presentation around the different caller associations in New England. And I guess because I know most of the callers, I tend not to say anything about myself. And then they'll come up later and say, well, why didn't you say, where you're from or this or that? I just didn't feel that comfortable doing it, or because maybe I knew them. But my name is Ken Ritucci. I do come from West Springfield, Massachusetts. I've been a member of CALLERLAB since 1983. I've been calling June will be 18 years full-time. Not full-time, 18 years. And I came about this presentation for salesmanship skills because for my job, I sell medical supplies to hospitals for a national distributor, which the corporate office is based in Richmond, Virginia. My job is to go into the hospital and into the actual departments and sell products to the end user. And I started thinking that basically what we do as callers is that we are really trying to sell ourselves. Now, I'm not going to talk about selling square dancing. I'm going to talk to you about selling yourself as a caller, okay? Because that's a totally different aspect as far as selling square dancing. I'm not here to sell square dancing because, in essence, if you're selling yourself correctly, you are selling square dancing. And we like to start out with, I've broken it down into being a leader, the 5 great rules of selling, why people buy, DBD, which is the dominant buying motive. And on the other side, I have selling yourself off stage, on stage, and then I have a few quotes. Some of what you hear today will not be new to you. If you've ever attended any type of caller's clinic or caller's schools, the things in the back are not something that I originated, but it's always good to hear. What I'd like to do is to have you be open-minded, because we are going to have questions later on. Be totally open-minded. The way I gear my presentation is to callers that basically are calling on a regular or semi-regular basis, or if you're an upstart caller, brand new, and you want to get calling. If for some reason you've either retired from calling, or you're on the downswing of your career, or you just teach in schools, or you just teach for fun nights, some of this may not always apply. But I find for the majority of people, it really does apply. For example, being a leader, a person's name is to him or her the sweetest sound in the world. One of the ways I think we sell ourselves in square dancing is by obviously being friendly with our dancers. And I'm not just talking about our club dancers, the people that you always know. I'm talking about if you go to a guest dance or you go to a festival. If you can try to remember people's names or look them in the eye when you shake their hand and you look at their name badge, people like to hear their name. They really do. They like to hear their name. They like you to say, if I can see your name here, Jim. Hi, Jim, instead of saying, hi, sir, how you doing? Hi, Jim. Hi, Mary. Hi, Jane. People like to hear their names. They like to feel important. And I think in sales, if you don't know the customer's name, you're not starting out on a very good track. So try to remember people's names and also say it. Be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves. How many times you're in between a tip or you're at a dance and dancers want to come up to you and talk to you? and either you do all the talking or they don't have a chance to get a word in edgewise. In sales, a good salesperson basically allows the customer to do the talking for the most part. People like to talk, and people like to talk about themselves. I think it's very important that we allow them to talk about themselves. Even if they come up, it's lessons night, and they come up and they gripe, and they just have a gripe. Let them gripe. I mean, it's important that they know that you are listening to what they're saying. Make the other person feel important and to do it sincerely. We need to make people feel important. As a square dance caller, with very few exceptions of people who might not agree with this point, obviously we need dancers. And by being strong-headed or not allowing the other person to make their point, you're not really selling yourself. You're not making that person feel important. And you need to do it sincerely, because people aren't stupid, and we shouldn't think that they are. And in some cases, even in sales, some salespeople think that the person on the other side of the desk they're trying to make a presentation to, has no idea what they're talking about, and that's not always true. I mean, let's face it, if we're square dance callers, which we are, and we're talking to square dancers, we're talking basically the same business, aren't we? They know about calling, and with the literature coming out and the calls and everything going on nowadays, they're getting to know more and more of the technical aspects of it. And if any of you call Advanced and Challenge, you're Advanced and Challenge dancers, and some of them are really up on everything. I mean, I call through C1, and I'll have some dancers come up to me and say, well, I think it'd be better if you didn't call it step and fold, you call it step and flip. That's the way they're doing it nowadays. So I look at them and say, well, okay. The call's still written as step and fold, but maybe I'm being behind the times. But to that person, that was important to them. And to stand there and be argumentative wouldn't do any good, and it really doesn't leave yourself in a good light. Number 4, the only way to get a best of an argument is to avoid it. And that's true. When you think about it, why argue? I mean, where does it get you in the end? It just gets people to be very combative. It gets people to step away. It gets people to get turned off about you, get turned off about your call. Whether you're right or wrong, it really doesn't matter. That's really not the point, is what I'm trying to say. The fact is, we need to be able to understand people, understand their needs, and be sincere about it. And any of the successful callers that you know and that I've known, and that you see how long they stay in the activity, it's because they're sincere. Now, I know we all know callers who don't seem to care much about people, or they turn their back when they're calling, or they seem to be high and mighty, or they think more of themselves than they really are. They survive maybe because they're excellent callers or because they've created a niche for themselves. But the majority of the callers that have been successful in this business through the years are the ones that are people-oriented and that really care about people. And as human beings, we all need to care about human beings. Number 5, become generally interested in other people. Now that sort of goes back to number 3, making the person feel important and do it sincerely. How many of you interact with your dancers outside of square dancing or after a dance? How many go out for pizza, beer, go over somebody's house? Okay, that's great. That's really probably what is needed, because then they see you in a different light, and they see you as being more human than just somebody up on the stage. And I think we need to do more of that. I do it to a degree. Most of my dances are usually 2-3 hours away from where I live, so I don't have all night to stay and socialize. But I do it at a point where I can. Or if I'm at a festival and I'm not scheduled to dance for a while, I'll go and dance a couple of tips with them. They like to see that. Number 6, call attention to people's mistakes indirectly. The clearest example would be when you're teaching classes. How many cases have you heard of somebody who says, "You, Jim, turn around," or "No, Mary, no, that's not right. You should be on the other side." These are things that perhaps you hear me say that and you say, "Oh, I would never do that." Or, Of course, who would do that? That's ridiculous. But how many have heard it done? Raise your hand. Okay, it's just about everybody in the room raised their hand. And we shouldn't be doing that, even though we mean well. No, Frank, turn around. The other hand. We don't mean it to be downgrading, but how does it sound on the other end of when you're down on the floor, he's down on the floor, and he's looking up. Now everybody's looking at who? They're all looking at Frank. Oh, come on, Frank, come on, hurry up, huh? You're holding up the class. And then they start getting a complex. So try to do it indirectly. If, for example, you're having a problem with the class or there's somebody drinking, you can get everybody together and just say, these are the rules. What I did this year, which was quite different, how many know about the 10 Commandments of square dancing? Probably everybody. I normally used to give that out when the class graduated. But this year, I had a class where the ladies would come up to me and say, men are being too rough. They're not doing this. They're not doing that. Can you please let them know this? So I says, well, let me do it at the beginning of the class. One of the class ladies said that the angels were pulling them all around. They didn't know where they were going. I mean, these are things we've all heard before. So I decided to read the 10 Commandments before the class started. And it seemed to work a little better. And then I handed out copies of it. And I would make jokes about it. But in one case, I sort of waited too long. I probably didn't do it right at the beginning. I did it maybe the 4th or 5th week in. And this is what probably prompted me to say, maybe I ought to read it now instead of when they graduate, because I can see the problems already occurring. So there's ways of pointing out people's mistakes. You can just do it as a group, just do it discreetly. You can just do it indirectly. But really, try to use professional judgment. And as the talk unfolds today and we get a chance to hear from you, all of this is really professional judgment. All of this. Praise all improvement, no matter how little or great it is. And this is another thing I think you need to do it sincerely. People don't want to be praised just for the sake of being praised. Every time you teach a call, either in a class or something, you don't always have to say, oh, that was great, that was great. You can overuse that, and people get very skeptical. I know I would. And it's important that you don't overuse praise, but give praise where praise is deserved. People need to hear that. And in the way the activity's going for classes nowadays, there's so much to teach and so little of time, at least especially in my area, that we're always pushing. It seems like we're pushing harder and harder for people to learn this activity, and that can wear on people and get them very frustrated. And people get down. And some nights when you're teaching, there's what they call teachable moments, unteachable moments. People aren't going to learn. They're not going to grasp. Then there's other nights that things that just fly. Everybody picks up and everybody learns. They're having a good night. And those are the nights that you want to recognize these people and make them feel important. Number 8, make the other person happy/excited about doing the thing you suggest. In essence, the whole purpose of calling for the people is to give them a good time, isn't it? But many times I think we overlook that, and we get up there, especially if you're a full-time caller or you call more than 3 or 4 nights a week. I mean, it may still be a hobby for you, but in essence, is it really a hobby? If you're out of your house calling 3, 4, 5, 6 nights a week, or obviously if you're a full-time caller traveling, it's more like it's not just a profession, it's a job, it's your livelihood. And how would you treat that? There are times when you may not feel like calling. You may be feeling sick. You're tired from traveling. You've had maybe some of you fly to a different part of the country to call, and you're tired about being on the plane. Well, I'm sorry, but the dancers that show up at your dance, they don't really care. They don't care if you're tired or not. They're there to have a good time. It's your job to make sure they do have a good time, or perhaps you either cut down on your schedule or you just take a break for a week or 2 and clear your head. But you really need to have these dancers having fun and to make sure that you do it sincerely. And I think that's the key also, is people need to feel that you're sincere. Number 9, don't talk just to show off your knowledge. One of the callers used to say that many callers have diarrhea of the mouth. All they want to do is talk. And that goes back to even selling. When I go and show a product up on the floor, there's only so much you can do as far as talking about the product. Eventually you have to be quiet and you have to allow the other person to ask questions, to talk, and to see if there's any interest in your product. But to stand there, how many of you have met pushy salespeople in your life outside of square dancing, and all they do is blah, 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 blah. And when they call you up on the telephone, they don't even introduce themselves. They just start talking right away. That just turns you off. Well, dancers get turned off too by pushy callers who insist on just talking, or they walk around and they have to brag. Nobody likes a braggart. Whether you're the best caller in your area or the most popular, or you've been calling 30 nights in a row and you're booked for every festival in the country, I don't see where that gets you. That and 75 cents gets you a cup of coffee as far as I'm concerned. Number 10, appeal to the emotions of your dancers. And we'll get into this a little bit later when we talk about how to read the floor and adjust. But we need to appeal. If, for example, a club member died and it's lessons night and the people show up and they're in a sort of a down mood, don't try to go around and say, hey, come on, let's have a good time. Did you enjoy that, Jim? Or let's, don't push them. Just appeal to their emotions. If they come up to you and they're upset, maybe you can't sympathize with them, but maybe you can empathize with them. There's a difference. Maybe you don't have to say, I feel sorry for you, but you can do the feel, felt, found. I understand how you feel. Other people have felt that way, and when they did, they have found this or that. It's called the feel, felt, found technique. It's most commonly used in sales. But I think you need to appeal to their emotions, and you need to, if they're up there, then you should be up there. If they come to you with a serious concern, I think you should listen to them in a serious manner and not just brush it off. Or how many times have you stood there, maybe in a festival or in a hallway or something, even out here, and you're talking to somebody and you notice they're really not looking at you, or they're looking over there, or they're looking over there. They're not being very sincere, are they? So give people the full attention. Let's talk about the 5 great rules of selling. There's the attention, interest, conviction, desire, and close. Those are really the 5 steps that we do in sales process of showing or detailing a product. And I'm going to ask you to stretch your imagination. I'm going to take you by a tip-by-tip step through a course of an evening with the 5 great rules. Now, I'll be quite honest with you. Although I sell for a living, when I go call a dance, I do not state in my mind, well, this is the first tip. I'm in the attention step, okay? I don't think like that, ever. But I came to realize that basically you can break down the course of an evening's dance into these 5 steps. In a sales process, you want to get the person's attention. There are all different ways you can do it. One of them could be, hi Jim, how you doing? You want to get their attention. You may want to make a startling statement. Jim, the car you're driving is a piece of junk. Okay, that's startling. Maybe you're there to sell them a new car, but you want to get their attention. There's one way of doing it. The first tip of an evening, what is that really? It's an attention getter. If you are guest calling and you haven't called for these people before, they don't know you for the most part. Maybe they've heard about you, maybe they haven't heard about you, but they really don't know you. And I'll tell you, besides guest calling, it's even that much more difficult when you're club calling, because they do know you. And they dance to you more often than other people, and it makes that much more difficult for you to raise your level and to satisfy them, because they hear you all the time. Club calling is probably the most difficult thing we can do in our activity. It's so easy to travel to different clubs or different areas and do maybe the same thing 2-3 nights in a row, because you're leaving town. You do the same thing 2-3 times in a row for your own club, what do you think happens? They're leaving town. It gets boring. And you got to work at it. And you should work at it. Salesmen won't stay in a sales position or business if he stops selling. And how do salesmen stop selling? They get lazy. They don't try as hard. They get a certain plateau of customers. And these customers may be buying the same products month in and month out, but there's no growth. And there should be growth in our calling activity. There should be growth in your calling career, whether it's on the club level or festival level or whatever. You should be working every day to continue to grow your, quote, sales or grow your calling. The attention step I normally relate to the first tip of the evening, because you're there to get their attention. People are coming into the back of the hall. Some of them may be hanging up their coats, and you may have already started calling, and they're already making a judgment on you, aren't they? Because they're listening to how you sound. They don't know you, but they're listening to how you sound. And usually you don't get a second chance to make a good first impression. That's obviously not a new quote. You've heard it before. So I relate the first tip to the attention step. We've gotten our customer's attention. We've gotten the dancer's attention. Now they're going to listen. The second step of a sales process is called the interest step. And now that I've gotten Jim's attention, because I sort of criticized his car, now I want to get his interest in what I want to sell him. So I usually think the second and third tips of an evening might be the interest step, if you want to relate it to that. You've gotten their attention. The next time they square up, well, gee, center's in. He didn't call cast off 3/4, did he? Well, I don't know. We don't know this guy. We better not automatically assume he's going to call cast off 3/4. The next time he calls centers in, or the next time he or she calls lead to the right, maybe it isn't circle to a line. Okay? Maybe you've gotten their attention. It would be the interest step. Now that you've got their attention, the spotlight's on you. You have to do something. Okay, the first tip might have been great, and they might have come up to you and started saying, gee, we enjoyed that. That was nice. You know, we're so used to doing circle to a line. We never believed you'd call lead to the right and do-si-do. But now the spotlight's on you, and you need to perform even further. And I think the second and third tips are the interest steps. You need to get their interest to a higher level and to keep their interest. The third step in the sales process is called the conviction step. And the conviction step basically is the facts and the benefits, or the facts and features and benefits of a product. I've gotten your attention. I've gotten your interest. I showed you this. You seem to be interested in it. You're willing to take the time to look at it and maybe hear what I have to say about it. But now you want to know more about it. You want to know the features. Well, why should I buy your product? What's it going to do for me? The old adage, don't sell the sizzle, sell the sizzle, don't sell the steak. Okay, if you've gotten their attention, you may not have much time to sell them that product, but you've got to be able to be very clear and concise and get out the key points that they want to hear. And as far as calling the tip, probably the third, fourth, a combination of the second, third or fourth, fifth and sixth tips of an evening are really the core of the dance, aren't they? Those are the times where we're going to make decisions whether or not we're going to workshop a tip. We're not going to workshop a tip. What are we going to call? Are we going to change? Are we going to do a little bit more all-position type dancing? Or are we not? These are all key decisions that you make while you're calling the dance. And this is the meat of the order. You may have one or two good tips, but if the rest of your dance goes downhill from there, you think you're going to have satisfied, quote, customers at the end of the evening? Has anyone ever looked at it like that before? The desire close is after I've shown you the features and the benefits of this product. You want to get them generally interested in and have the desire to want to buy it. Well, as square dance callers, and I haven't met anybody who's disagreed from this yet, why do you go and call a dance? I mean, do you go and call a dance and hope that they never call you back? Or hope that they never come up to you and say, gee, we really had a good time? How many people can honestly raise their hand here and say, yeah, I'll call your dance, but I don't really care what you think. Or I don't want to get booked back. Or I don't care if you go and tell anybody what you think. Nobody would say that. Why would you be in this profession? Why would you do anything? Why would you do your job if you wanted to do it, half-heartedly? So we want to make sure that the dancers have a desire to want to come back and dance to you. You have to give them that desire. I truly believe that when they leave the dance that night, that there's a desire for them to either book you back, take your business card, quote your name to another club, or just give you a nice compliment. Everybody wants a compliment. The close step in square dancing is really, in the sales process, is really the sell. Okay, it's time to ask for the order, and basically there are several ways you can do it. You ask the prospect, is there any more questions? Have we satisfied everything? If they say no, I have no more questions, you've answered all my questions, then you basically can go and ask for the order. There are other ways of doing it. In the sales process, we may have what we call the alternate choice close, where we say, okay, Jim, would you want to buy 5 gallons of our solution, or do you want to get the 10-gallon drums instead? You're giving them a choice, and normally, when the customer says, no, I'll take the 5-gallon size, what have they done? They've bought the product, haven't they? In the square dance process, you want to close the dance, obviously with the last tip, with something that is going to just sort of close the whole evening. If the dance has been going along great, now's not the last tip of the evening is not the time to start trying some weird gimmick that you think's going to frustrate the dancers. Obviously, they've been dancing 2.5, 3 hours to you. They're probably more tired. It's not a time to get fancy. And we need to understand that. When you close the dance at the end of the evening, what do you want people to say when they're walking out? You want them shaking their head yes. For example, you can tell with some of the buying signals that people give off at a square dance. How many times have you gone, we'll just say, for example, guest tips right now, or guest dances. And you call a tip, and you get off the stage, and there's a large buzzing around in the squares. What do you think they're talking about if they've never heard you before? You think they're talking about what they had for dinner? No, they're talking about you for the most part. And you can tell you can tell what is the feel of the crowd is when you hear them shaking their heads, all these type of actions, or smiling, they're laughing. And as you walk around and talk to these people, most of the time they'll come up to you and say, boy, that was a really good tip, or that's great, the dance is off to a good start. Those are technically all buying signals that they're buying what you're selling. They're accepting your calling, and that's good, and that's positive. And really, that's what you want. Not just for yourself, but you're obviously there, you want them to have a good time. Why do people buy? DBM, the dominant buying motive. Well, very briefly, they buy to live a longer and better life. They buy convenience. They buy health exercises, or they buy health foods, or they join health clubs because they want to live an easier life. They want to live a healthier life. Why do they square dance? What's one of the key features we do when we advertise square dancing? Exercise. Why would they want to buy you, for example? Why would they want to buy into your calling style? Why would they want to come back and dance to you? Because you gave them a nice, smooth, comfortable dance. Your dancing wasn't poorly timed. It wasn't herky-jerky. You didn't do overflow where everybody's running around in a circle, or you didn't go up to the middle and then back, and then they go like this, and they got to go like this. By the end of the night, they got a backache. You put your choreography together in a nice, smooth manner. Perhaps you didn't teach anything that night. Perhaps you were just very easy-going, smooth-going. You played old singing calls. You let them reminisce about some of the calls. And one of the best singing calls that's come out in a long time that really would help sales, quote, sales for the evening of your dance, is the, Randy Doherty did it, the Itsy Witsy Yellow Polka Dot Bikini. Thank you. How many have that? If you don't, go listen to it. It's on Royal. It's great. And every time I play that, people come up to me and say, oh, that was around a long time before you were, or something. They'll make a comment, but it brought their attention, didn't it? Feeling of importance. People buy because they want to feel important. That is a status that some people buy. How many people do you know that have to have the latest car, or they have 2 or 3 cars, and they got a boat and a vacation home and this and that? And I mean, that's their business, but some people buy for status. It's just a status thing, or they live in an affluent neighborhood and everybody drives BMWs or Saabs or Volvos or whatever. I mean, if that's what they want to do, fine. But in essence, they're buying to keep up with the Joneses. To be appreciated. People buy to be appreciated. They want to purchase things that hopefully somebody will say, thank you for doing that for me. They want to be appreciated. And why would you want people, why do you go up and call a square dance? Because you really want to be appreciated, don't you? I haven't met a caller yet who says, no, I don't care if I'm appreciated. I don't care what you think at the end of the night. Anyone who says that really isn't telling the truth. You call because you want to be appreciated. For change or variety. People buy things for change or variety. A person who's been, I have a relative who drives nothing but blue cars. Through the years, my uncle, all he's had is blue cars. He loves blue. And then the last time he bought a white car. And I said, why'd you buy a white car? He said, I got sick of blue. People get tired. They want variety. They want change. Why do they go to different callers? For variety, for change. If you're a club caller, and I'm a club caller, and I have one club that I call for, it's awfully difficult to always give them variety and change. Sometimes you just can't do it. But what they really do is raise your level of your calling competency by making you work a little bit harder because you want to satisfy them. even more so probably because you're going to see them. They're the ones that are giving you steady business, so to speak. You're there once a week for lessons. You may do 1 dance a month. You may do 2 dances a month. I don't know, whatever your situation is. But your home program is very, very important to you. And people want variety. Why do you, as a caller, want those people to go out and book you after a dance or after they've heard you? Because you have been a change for them. If they've never danced to you before, you've been a variety to them for that evening, but yet you want to go back to them. What you're saying is, you like our product, it works for you, buy it again. In essence, that's what we're doing. We don't think that way. I certainly don't think that way at the end of the evening. I don't say at the end of the night, did everybody like the product? I hope you buy some more of it. But in essence, that's really what we're doing, whether we admit it or not. For peace of mind, security, all types of alarm systems for our home and for our cars. People want peace of mind. People want security. Well, in some ways, you want them to sort of buy into your calling for peace of mind and security. So when they know they go to Jim's dance here, they know they're going to get a nice, smooth, comfortable dance. And if you get the reputation of being a top-notch caller or somebody who generally cares about your dancers, basically that's what you're asking them to buy. That's the reputation you're doing. As a salesperson, if the product doesn't work and there's a problem with it, your reputation is on the line to go and service the problem. Selling it is one thing. Servicing is, how about like buying a car? Does the sale end after you drive out of the dealership? What if the next day you have a problem with your car? Who are you going to call? The salesperson, aren't you? And if that salesperson says, well, you know, you bought the car a week ago, call service department. What do you want me to do about it now? I can't talk to you now. I got to talk to another customer. I mean, that wouldn't be very good service, would it? So as a square dance caller, we're not just selling ourselves, but we're servicing. I always feel if you're going to stay in this business a long time, you really need to fly a straight line. You need to be honest with people and not to have big changes and ups and downs in your life as far as your calling career is concerned, because you would get a reputation of not being responsible. How many people know of callers who have not shown up at dances more than once or twice? I know in my career so far there's been callers I know who just, even with the same club, they've done it. 2-3 times they've missed it. Whether it's been legitimate or not, if the club isn't notified, that's not leaving a good image in their mind. You're not really selling yourselves if you do that. And of course, we all understand that circumstances arise at the last minute, obviously. But there are reputations to be gotten in this business, and that is not one of them. And also for professional progress. We really are here calling and selling ourselves because we want to progress in our professional career. That's really what we want to do. We don't want to just stay status quo. Why would you want to stay status quo? If you really want to sell yourselves as a square dance caller, you need to be a little bit different. You need to work at it. You need to show the people that you're a reason why they should have you back. Instead of maybe caller A and you're caller B. Caller B is a reason why, because we've done this or because I've proven that or because of this. There's got to be a reason why you want to progress in your career, but you need to convey that to the dancers. Let's flip over to the other side, and then we're going to have maybe an open conversation to some questions. Selling yourself off stage. Now, a lot of this is not brand new. I'll be the first to admit it, but let's go over it and see how it relates to selling. Talking to the dancers. How many get off the stage at a dance or lessons and sincerely walk around and talk to the people? How many know of callers who literally sit up on stage during a dance and don't get off? How many know of callers who get off the stage and don't walk around and talk to people? Okay, they exist. They're out there. Is that the kind of caller we want to be? Do you think they're selling themselves professionally? Do you think they're doing themselves any good? I don't think so. And I think it's all part of it. I had a comment from a dancer once who said, well, you know, you shouldn't be concerned with that. You're just here to get paid to call. I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't want to get just paid to call. I don't want to get paid for that. That's not why I'm there. I'm there because I want to make sure that the whole evening goes well, not just when I get up and call. And to show them that I'm human and that I have a personality and I can talk to them other than just calling. Break time, thank you. This is something I've been doing since the start. I don't know, obviously, in all your geographical locations how you do it, but in New England, We have two types of breaks at our dances. One is we have one at, if the dance starts at 8, we have one at about 9:30. The dance goes to 11, so they have a refreshment break, and everybody stops and eats refreshments. Or the other part of it is the dance will go from 8 to 10:30, and then at 10:30 people will sit down and have refreshments. If you have any type of that feature at your dances, that is a good time to go around, and what I do is I go to each table, and I thank the people for coming to the dance. And I obviously do it sincerely because I mean it. And I say, I hope you're having a good time tonight. I appreciate you coming out. Thank you. And they like that. And I never thought that was such a big deal. But years later, I had some dancers come up to me and say, you know, you're the only one who ever comes around and thanks us for coming to the dances. I don't see that often. It's not something I did because I wanted to go around and get votes, so to speak. It's something I did because it's different. Okay, not everybody does it, and maybe that's why I stand out a little bit, and why maybe there are things you do in your career for calling, in your home programs, or whatever you do during the course of an evening that makes you stand out. And if it's successful, keep doing it. Guest dates, special dances, follow-up letter. If you are calling full-time, it's really your business, and as a business, I think it's very professional in a nice way to follow up with a letter to the club that booked you for maybe a very special dance, a festival. I do that when I go overnight somewhere. I'll write to the president of the club or to the club contact, and I'll say, I enjoyed myself Saturday night. Thank you for having me. I look forward to seeing you again. Just a quick little note. And that really sticks in their mind. Just like in the sales process, the salesperson who writes a follow-up letter after the first initial visit, just say, Dear Mrs. Smith, thank you for meeting with me on Thursday morning. I greatly appreciate it. Should you have any questions about what we discussed, please feel free to contact me. It may not make the sale right away, but then again, we're not always doing this for some tangible item, are we? These are all things that you do on a regular basis that builds up your career. So for guest dates, special dances, I always do a follow-up letter. Other callers and leaders. We always have to work with other callers and leaders, whether you're active in callers associations or not. It does not promote your career. It is not professional judgment to badmouth people. I'm not going to say that nobody ever talks about anybody because we all know that's not true, but obviously you have to use judgment of when you do it, who you say it to. You wouldn't maybe go up to a group of dancers and say, oh, yeah, well, you know, he can't call or she can't call. Oh, she's horrible or something. Something that would be very demeaning that may get back to that person. You definitely have not made a sale at that point if it does. You've really hurt yourself, and we need to be careful of that, and I know that it goes on. I'm not naive enough to think it doesn't go on because we're all human, and these things happen, whether it's square dancing or somebody you don't get along with in the workplace, or an argument you have with a relative. I mean, these things just happen, and they will continue to happen, but you won't be promoting yourself professionally if you allow yourself to go around and be the bearer of bad news about other people. Be active in local associations. How many here are active in a callers association that you at least attend the meetings? Not saying you have to be the club, the association president all the time. That's good because it really serves a couple of purposes. One is it puts you out there in front of the fellow callers. If you never go to a caller association in your area for whatever reason, if you can never get to one, they may not know who you are. And who are they going to ask? I know in New England at the caller associations, if people need somebody to fill in or something, they'll see you at a meeting. They'll say, hey, can you do Tuesday night for me? Or, you know, are you free on Wednesday nights? And that's how, if you're an upstart caller, that's how you're going to get some of these opportunities and these breaks, is by sharing your time with these associations. And it's really our business to know what's going on in this activity of ours, isn't it? We need to be up what's going on in our local associations. Just besides coming here on a national basis, you should know what's going on in your area. You should be up on it. I think it's your business. I think when we go to a dance that we're selling ourselves and we're promoting ourselves, we need to know if there's any specific issues in your particular area that the dancers are hot on or they want to discuss. If you don't know, you're not really making a professional judgment to help yourselves. So try to be active in your association. Promoting yourself through various forms of advertisement, flyers, ads, business cards. How many promote in a If you have a local magazine in your area, how many put an ad in that? Anyone? Okay. We all must have business cards. That's just good repetitious type advertisement. I can't say enough about advertising, but it depends where you want to go, too. Many of you may just be happy with the situation you have. Many of you, because of job reasons or family reasons, you can't take on any more than you have. Or, I don't want to go more than 100 miles outside my area. Then there's other callers, especially some of the young callers coming up in our area. They're in their early 20s. They have these visions that they just want to be a full-time traveling caller, and that's what they want. And I say to them, well, if that's what you want, then spend your money and go to the national convention. You know, take the tips that they give you in the beginning and build your way up for better spots at that. I mean, if you want to be a national caller, go where the national callers are. If you want to be a local caller, support your local association. It depends what you want to do in your own professional career and how much money you want to spend advertising that. Volunteer your time for special situations. How many volunteer their time here for benefit dances? Okay. How many know of callers who never do? Okay. That's their privilege, okay? Nobody can make anybody do that. That's their business, and they shouldn't be criticized for that. However, I think we need to give something back in our activity. We can't always seem to want, because believe it or not, on the other side of the microphone, there are dancers who just don't believe that callers would ever give. They think because you get paid, all you do is want. So give of your time, and don't always look for something for it, because you may get repaid tenfold on it. You may get 5 more dates out of it, just having a chance to call. You may just have met a contact that will help you out 4 years down the road. You don't know. One of the things that I'm doing this year is my company gives out these mugs, and they're not quite as big as this, but they're on this type of a... they're not that big. That's huge. Okay. Anyway, they're like a hot thermal mug for coffee for traveling in your car. And my company gives them out with their logo on them. So I stopped and thought about this, and I said, you know, that would be a great idea to give out to the dancers. So I ordered 600 of them through the company that we deal with, and they went in no time. I did not charge the dancers for them. I gave them to the dancers, 1 per couple, or obviously if they were single, 1 per single. I had just got 1,200 in more. And what I did was, yes, I gave them something, but I wasn't foolish enough. On the side of it, I wrote, on both sides, I had printed, Square Dance with Ken Ritucci, name, address, BMI, ASCAP license, member of CALLERLAB. Now, that's like a $6 or $7 item that they're getting for free. But when they walk out of that hall with that mug, they've got your name on it. Every time they tilt it up towards their eyes, they see your name. And they have your address and they have your phone number on it. So, in essence, it really is selling yourselves. And they appreciate that. I gave some out Saturday night before I came here. I just got my new shipment in. And you wouldn't believe how many thank yous you get out of that. People just can't believe that callers will give something to the dancers without looking for money. And they appreciate that. So there's one way of promoting yourself. Getting your fee. Well, this could be a sore issue. I know it is. I don't really want to get into it too much, but how much do you feel you're worth? Or how much do you think you can get? Or maybe sometimes you can't get as much as you want. But then again, do you walk away from the business? I mean, it's a very touchy subject with clubs and dancers, is money. At least it is in New England. I'm sure it's not much different anywhere else. And how you position yourself. Do you come across as being greedy? Do you have a chance to get 4 dates in the same area next year? Would you get more money out of it by doing more dances than if you went in for a one-shot deal? In sales, you really would not be a professional salesperson if you were just out to get the quick dollar, the quick sale, the big hit. What you want is the repeat business. What you want is the reputation that you're not out there just for the big hit and walk away. Because in the long run, you'll do better. It's like the price of something and what it actually costs you. You always buy the cheapest item, and then when it breaks down, you spend more money in repairs. Where if you had bought the more expensive item in the beginning, it would have lasted and you wouldn't have broken down. But in the sales process out in the selling world of anything we buy, what do we look for? price. And although we say, well, we want quality, I mean, in my profession, the medical profession, I'd be a billionaire for every time they said, well, we're interested in quality, but, it's all going to be a matter of price because we've got these budget crises, and it all comes down to price many times. They say they're interested in quality, and maybe sincerely they are, but their decisions lead them not to be very sincere in that. They end up going for price. So for as far as getting your fee is concerned, it's something you have to work on an individual basis. Obviously, if you're a brand new caller and there's a caller who's been calling 10 years down the road and he's getting, $150 or $175 a night for a dance, I don't know. Maybe you don't qualify to get $175 that night because you're just starting out. But maybe down the road, if you enhance your career and you work at it and you get good at it and you get more and more dates, well, yes, then probably you've built yourself up. Not all good business is good business. Know when to walk away from an offer. How many honestly have walked away from a square dance offer because it just wouldn't have made good business sense for you? Whether it was too far to drive. Okay. I teach a caller school every summer in August. It used to be the Al Brunage Earl Johnson Caller School. I've just had the pleasure of taking it over. But we talk about this at our school, and some of the new callers, they'll say, how can you turn away from a dance? My God, I'm dying to get booked. How can you do that? But as you get into this and you treat it as a business, which really, that's what it is. It's a hobby, but it's a business, that you have to do that sometimes. You have to walk away from business sometimes. You have to realize that, well, I have family commitments, or I have a job I have to get to at 8 in the morning. I don't want to drive. Being honest with yourself and knowing your limitations. This is probably one of the most important selling features we all can do. Is you see it at festivals, whether it's just a local festival where everyone gets to volunteer their time, or it's a festival that you're getting paid to call at. How many have you heard callers get into a hall that really they can't call the level? They're over their head. Has anyone ever seen that? Okay, well, some of you have. It happens. Why they do that, I don't know, but they do it. Are they selling themselves professionally? No, they're not. What kind of image are these dancers going to have when they leave the hall? Exactly. And that's going to be a long time to overdo that, isn't it? You need to know your limitations. You need to realize, I realized a long time ago that I will not be a C3A caller. Okay? If I quit my job and wanted to write choreography all day, I suppose maybe I could. But I don't want to. That's a job. And that's not what I want to do. And I think the sooner in our careers we realize where we want to go in this activity, the better off we'll be. I realized a long time ago that I wasn't going to be a challenge caller. I will call through the C1, maybe C2 program on a more recreational type thing. If the dancers want to go and start dancing to all the top challenge callers in the world because they're not getting enough from me, well, they're going to do it anyway. So I just realized that the mainstream, the plus, and through C1 is where I want to be, and that's what I enjoy. And if you can make those decisions and stick to them, you're really a strong person. But we see time and time again callers making these judgments that they want to rush, they want to get there. They see some of the top guys at the National, and right away they want to do all that. It just doesn't happen overnight, does it? So you need to be honest with yourself. Very quickly, on stage, these are things we all know, or if we don't know, or we haven't heard it in a while, obviously look at the dancers, try to be sincere. We might all know callers who read, and they do this. And I've seen this many times. Callers, normally newer callers, are reading everything, and the floor is broken down, and they don't know it. It's true. It's sort of funny, but it's sad, because that's the method they've learned to start calling with instead of some other method. And they're reading their material. While there's nothing wrong with possibly reading your material, in fact, when you get into C2 and higher, any of the top guys, they're writing their material, but they're reading the cue cards and getting ideas from that. But in that situation, it sort of almost warrants it because of the difficulty of material that they are calling and that the degree of difficulty these dancers want at that level. But if you're calling a mainstream dance and you're reading everything and you're not looking at the dancers, they'll know that. And that's really not a good selling feature of yourself. Stand near the front of the stage. How many know dancers or callers who actually call to their back like this? their back to the floor. Has anyone ever seen that? Okay. Now, we have a caller in New England who does that, and he calls excellent. I mean, he'll be like this, and and they're doing everything, and he knows right where they are because he's probably following a mental imagery type calling. But I don't really think that's very professional. I think it's sort of a turn-off-ish, and I think it might be a little bit offensive to people because, hey, we're paying you money. Can't you at least look at us? Appear relaxed even if you're not. Try to take deep breaths. Try to at least appear relaxed even if you're not. We all get nervous. Smile. Can't overemphasize that. Obviously not a phony smile. You don't walk around like this all day long. People are going to know that that's not being very sincere, but at least smile. Talk to the dancers. Perceive the dancers. How do you perceive the dancers? How do you read a floor? That comes with experience reading a floor. And every judgment you make in your selling process of a course of an evening has to deal with how you read or judge the dancers. Especially when you guest call, and the traveling callers would know this, that when they go and call, they don't know the floor, do they? So they can't just start out with a left-handed relay to deucey at a plus level if they don't know that the club can do a left-handed relay to deucey. How many times have we been doing spin chain and exchange the gears, but then do a swing through first, then call spin chain and exchange the gears where the men are the leaders? Well, maybe in your area the men can do it with no problem, but in our area it's like as soon as the men have to be the leader and raise their hand and try to lead around, they get nervous, they fludge it, and it's very difficult. Would that be the kind of choreography you want to go into and start right out from the bat if you don't know these people? I don't think so. It'd be very gutsy, and it might ruin your career. Not so much ruin it, but it wouldn't be the right step that we want to make. We need to make judgments, and we need to be able to read the crowd, and that comes with experience. Newer callers have a hard time learning how to read a floor because they haven't been in front of that situation enough to do it. But as many of you know, as you go on and you get more and more experience calling and feeling relaxed up on stage, yes, you get a good feel. Even the top-notch callers who are traveling all over, they know how to read the floor at that point. If they don't, they're going to be in trouble. Professional judgment. The use of singing calls. Very, very important. Very important. We do a whole segment at our callers school on just the professional judgment and the use of singing calls. Many callers want to sound like the top-notch singers. Many of them want to sound just like Tony and Jerry Story and some of these guys that are recording and traveling around the country. One caller in our area says, I buy every Royal record. Well, that's fine, but can you do every Royal record? I mean, I talked with Tony Oxendine, and Tony's going to be on my staff next year. He says, I don't even do all of ours, He says, I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. But this is the image that some people have. And the use of singing calls, how many times have we seen somebody at a dance try to imitate a well-known caller doing a singing call, and they just do a horrible job of it? Or they use an Irish accent or something during a St. Paddy's type day dance, and they don't really sound very Irish. Could be very damaging. I tend to be more conservative, but I feel that if you're going to stay in the activity a long time, getting up there and trying to imitate other people, unless you can pull it off 100%, you really don't help yourselves. I really don't think you do. And I think we need to use professional judgment. And singing calls is so key in our program. You can have choreography that maybe doesn't wow the crowd, or maybe you're relatively new and you're not doing too much and the choreography is very standard, and there's nothing wrong with that. But people may remember that, but if you get up and do a singing call that really wows them or gets them singing or an uplifted mood, they'll remember that. They won't remember your choreography. Or if you couldn't find your corner 3/4 of the way through the tip and you had a horrible time, they may forget that if you leave them walking off that floor with the singing call that they're singing to. The singing call you use at the end of the night. That's usually what many people are whistling or singing as they walk out the door. If it's been an upbeat night, you want to keep it up and fluffy. If it's been an okay night or you want to end it on a softer song, that's okay too. You have to read the crowd. If you have a crowd that they're just down and there's some floors you just can't raise. How many have gone to a dance where you walk off and you're thinking, my God, these people, what do you do to get them going? It happens. It happens. Well, maybe that's not the night that you try to force it on them. So maybe that's not the night you do some of your best, raise your hands and all this type of stuff. If they're not that type of a crowd, that's all well and good. Don't force feed it down their throat. Use your judgment. Do something else. Adjust. And be creative. I guess it has to do with be creative. Be creative. Don't be afraid to take chances, but be different. A few quotes. A sale isn't a thing, it's a process. It isn't standing still, it's moving. It isn't one long job, it's a series of smaller jobs that takes a long time to master. Sort of sounds like calling, doesn't it? It takes a long time to master. A long time. It's a series of small jobs. We don't get there overnight. We go slow, we progress, and we see our own progression. And how do you know you're being successful in sales, in calling? Well, in sales also. How do you know? Because you're selling more. People are buying more. Your income's up. Your sales are up. You haven't lost your job. But in the calling career, how do you know? If you are interested in building your career to whatever level, there are guidelines that you can go by. Are you getting more dates? Are you getting phone calls? Are you having the opportunity to say no? Some people don't have that opportunity. I'd rather have the opportunity to say, I'm booked. I can't take any more. I'm out 7 nights a week. I call on Sunday afternoons. There's no place to put it. I'd like to have that opportunity than to always hope that the phone rings. And for some callers, the phone won't be ringing because they're not being creative. They're not using professional judgment. They're not selling themselves. They're not being sincere. They're not letting the dancers know that they care. You never get a second chance to make a good first impression. That's obviously very true. And people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. People don't care what kind of titles you have, or if you're a member of this or you've called for that. That doesn't mean anything. But show me that you care. Show me that you come down to my level. Dance a tip with me. Be human. Let me know that you're not in it just for the buck. And then I'll care. And then I'll help you. Let's open up to some questions or comments. I'll be like Phil Donahue here, and I'll start walking around. Does anyone have anything? Yes.
All right, I'm J.R. Sparks from New Albany, Indiana. One thing I want to comment you never even came across was on selling yourself, the partner. And there's a big thing going on here in CALLERLAB about the partner in calling. Your partner is very important. And listen to them because they can really help you.
That's a good point. And I have talked about that before. Thank you for bringing it up. There are partners, whether male or female, that are going to be there supporting you, whether behind the scenes or on the scene. And I know of callers whose wives do everything for them. They take the bookings. They go around the dance floor and they shake hands and they're talking to the people, and they get to be more popular than the callers sometimes. And then there's other partners, male or female, that carry the equipment in, or they help out, or they set up, or they don't get in the way. They what's that song? You stayed in the background while I had all the success, or something. But that's very true. Your partner can be a very good selling feature for you. And please, if you do have a partner, I'm sure you've worked things out and it's working out fine for you. But don't underestimate that. Communicate, yes, because they'll be very honest with you. If you really feel like there's two ways of knowing whether you did a good job. A, tape yourself and listen to yourself afterwards on the way home, or ask your partner. Gee, did you think that reminiscence of Frank Sinatra was pretty good? No, I think it really stunk, and I hope you throw that record out. Listen to them. Listen to them. But I like that record. Everybody's doing it. Well, I don't care. The next time you go, I'm not going with you because I'll be embarrassed. Listen to them. Yes.
Make sure you introduce her.
Yes, make sure you introduce your partner. Very good. It's very important that you do that or make sure how many partners here that go to a dance, the club asks them to dance. And they keep you relatively busy. How many go to a dance and you sit all night because nobody asks you to dance? Very good. One. Ken Bauer, yes.
Poor little D stayed home with the kids. If you're recall that. And she looks like a child anyway. And Ken, after being in a certain club, maybe 5 years in a row, something like that, brought this little doll into the dance and didn't say anything as to who she was. He noticed that the dancers sort of turned off on Ken because here he was with somebody that they had never seen before. And about halfway through the dance, he remembered, I haven't introduced my wife, Dee. Boy, was there a turnaround, because they were sure that he had some little girl that, young enough to be his daughter, you know.
Well, I've seen that too. Any other questions or comments? Please feel free to open up. No, I'm being real with you. I've seen that also. I cannot tell a lie. We're being taped. Any other comments or questions about this whole process? Again, let me reiterate the 5 steps: the attention, interest, conviction, desire, and close. I do not actively go to a dance and say, get off the stage and say, well, next tip, I'm in the conviction stage. I better really better lay into it now. I don't think like that. But because I'm in sales, I finally started thinking, this is what we do. We're selling ourselves. Whether we want to admit it or not, everything we do is in some sort of sales process. Whether you don't like the word sales or not, you are doing it for a reason. There's got to be a reason why we're doing this. Comments, questions? Anyone else? Before we wrap up, I'd like to talk a little bit more hear from you. Are there any ideas that you people use out there that make yourselves stand out in your own program?
We were talking about possibly using someone's name, calling their name on the floor. What I've done for years, my wife is noted for talking. We always call her mother. Everybody calls my wife mother. But if we have a trouble on the floor and somebody didn't get through, I'll say, well, that's all right. Mother was talking too loud, and so they didn't hear what the call was. And I've had, and my wife's had people come up to her and say, hey, I wouldn't live with a man that blame me like that. They don't realize, but we get their attention and they listen.
That's a nice way of doing it, or it could backfire. I mean, you could. It works well between you and your spouse, but other people will say, "How can you live with that man? He's always criticizing you like that. It wasn't your fault; it was her fault." Any other comments or questions or ideas? Here you go. Just state your name and where you're from.
I'm Bob Stern from near Syracuse, New York. One thing I like to try and do is get to a dance early enough so I can set up my equipment and be at the door and greet people as they come in the door, shake their hand, let them know who I am so that they don't have to say, well, who in the world is that guy over there? I like to let them know who I am, greet them, and especially on the weekends that I run, whenever they come through the campgrounds, I like to be there to tell them where they can park, what they can do. We try and run the whole weekend ourselves and let them know that they're there because we want them to be there.
Touch. Exactly. Yes, sir.
I'm Roy Davis. This is Louisville here. And prior to being on the National, we also ran a Caller's Choice Square Dance Club from 1963 till 25 years when we couldn't get anybody to take it over. The one thing I'd like to tell all National callers coming through, please call us within 2 hours of dance time if you're going to be late. Or if you check into a motel, let us know where you are so we can make sure that there's a wake-up call for you. I remember C.O. Guest telling about a time when he had a wake-up call for 6:30. They did at 6:30 in the morning, and he missed the dance that night at 6:30.
It's the wrong 6:30. Back here, any questions? Sure, come on up.
Jimmy Burst from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I don't really have a question. I just got another comment to add. Being a young caller coming up, I've found out that appearance, your dress, makes a big difference too. If I would go dressed as I am today in a sweatshirt, people are going to be turned off. So I've been going to my dance as a caller wearing a suit, and I found that a lot of people, I've earned their respect more being the young guy. What does this kid know? Well, they found out that I know a little more than what my appearance may even show.
That's very important, too. I'm glad you brought it up. Dress. Cal Golden for years. I mean, when you thought of Cal Golden, what did you think of? Right. Changed his clothes. Singing Sam Mitchell from Florida used to do that. Liberace. What do you think of Liberace when you, besides his greatness in the piano? His diamond rings, yeah. His costumes, his outrageous costumes. But there's two sides to that, and you can go overboard. We had a very famous caller, many of you might know, did most of his calling in the New England area, has passed away 4 or 5 years ago, Franny Heinz. And Franny used to be famous for wearing a hat. And he'd lay down on stage, and he'd call laying on the stage, and he'd be wearing crazy hats. And he would call like heads lead right, do a right and left through, and veer to left, and say, "You just did slip the banana." And if you go to Burleson's, there is a peel the banana call in there or something, and he would call it directional. He'd say, "You just did, walk the bird, you just did flip the tree," or whatever. But he was known for that. There's been some callers who've come up since then who try to imitate that, wearing crazy hats. It just doesn't work. But dress is another style, another way. Also, when you're appearing on stage, you don't want big bulgy things in your pocket, and big chains and whatever. Pardon? Your hands. How many people call like this? It's not only not right, but it doesn't sell yourself. And this is, you act bored, you act like you know everything. Stand straight, stand tall, make sure your shoes are shined, dress nice. The ladies who get up and call, they wear nice dresses, don't wear open shirts. I remember a few years ago we got into this stage where some of the callers were wearing open shirts with the gold chains and the hairy chest. Well, that looked pretty good if you were Tom Jones, but for square dancing, I don't think that's proper. That's my own personal opinion, whether it was the style back then, and some people took that and ran with it. So appearance is very important. Keep yourself in shape, keep yourself up, be energetic. Everything you do is a decision in some way. In programming we have, if any of you are caller coaches or thinking of being caller coaches, in order to take that exam, it's very strenuous. And one of the things that I learned when I was taking it was that we have what we call micro-programming. It's when you're up there calling, and if you're doing specifically site calling, you are making hundreds of decisions right away as you go along. You're not reading anything. You're not memorizing anything. You're watching the dancers, and you're calling, and you make the decision whether they touch a quarter or right and left through or whatever. Those are called micro-programming. And I think we do a lot of micro-programming when we're trying to sell ourselves because we're always making decisions. Everything you make, every singing call you take out of that record case is a decision you're making in order to enhance